We've got some fresh
Hey,
new
I'm
young
Luis.
talent
And
doing
I'm
some things
Luis.
that
And
I
you're
know
listening
you
to the
haven't heard
Content is
before.
Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit.
If you'd like to learn how to turn that content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh yeah, there's a small surprise in there for you. Tiny,
Go
tiny.
check it out.
Go check it out. Let's
And
check it out.
today, guy, awesome guest, and we're gonna be talking about his story, how he dropped from Harvard to build a 7-figure business. I'm gonna say, and he's in the way of building a second 7-figure business. If it
My
is not a 7-figure business
goodness.
already, we'll see.
Oh, so good. Fonzie, do we have a sponsor today?
Great question, sir. I
Oh,
appreciate
you're welcome.
it.
Great
Today's
question.
sponsor is your own, the Biz Bros with Content Momentum. And you might be asking yourself, what is content momentum? Well, if you produce a long form piece of content just like this one that you're listening to or watching, and you want to turn it into value packed bite-sized assets, right? Distill the ideas and send them into the world
So
to
good.
amplify your contribution.
Let's go.
Again, do not amplify the noise, amplify the contribution.
Yes.
Then we want to help you out. Please slide in the DMs at BizBrosCo on Facebook, on Instagram.
All right, guys, go ahead and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button. Do us that favor. So that way, every Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, you go ahead and listen to these golden boulders that we bring you and our guest brings you. And don't forget to follow us on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is
everywhere.
right. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you
Yes.
will, please share it, because you don't know who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Welcome to another episode with another incredible guest. Today's guest might be one of the smartest people we've had the opportunity to talk to. Not only that, but he is currently building a business entirely based on repurposing, or should we say, distilling the best ideas in the world.
That's right. I connected with him in one of my favorite online communities. Shout out to Trends. They're pretty epic. He made a post in which he would recommend the best book for people's current challenges. Long story short, I was amazed at how many books he has read and how he holds on to all those lessons, all that information.
And that's why he founded Shortform, where he summarizes published ideas that are worth knowing. Not only that, he also built Prep Scholar, a company that now does high 7 figures in revenue. All this after dropping from Harvard. We are going to dig deeper in his story because he has done some incredible things.
I am so excited for today's guest. Please welcome avid reader, founder of Prep Scholar and Shortform, and master problem solver, Alan Cheng. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is awesome.
I'm so excited, man.
I know.
You guys are way too nice.
Alan, I think I'm more excited than Fonzie now. After that intro, I'm like, holy crap, what? It's incredible, man. Thank you. It's an honor having you here. An honor connecting with you, and we're extremely excited to share your message and all the knowledge that's in there between the eyes.
Yeah. Hope I can be helpful to your audience, and yeah, just love to share whatever part of my experience is helpful and learn, of course, more about you guys and your journey.
Appreciate it, Alan. Thank you. And you know, I do want to give you a shout out real quick and short form because, you know, you were so kind to share with me access to short form. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I started digging in there and reading these summaries that you guys are doing, which are extremely insightful. They are absolutely amazing. So I do want to encourage people to go check it out right now. Is it shortform.com?
Yeah, shortform.com. Sign up. We have free book summaries for every account that you set up. So you can check out the quality, hundreds of books and articles, and we're expanding our library all the time. So yeah, check out shortform.com.
So good. Where were you
perfect.
like 20 years ago? When I was in school? I'm just saying.
I mean, he's here now, so you better sign up.
I
But,
know.
Alan, let's get this started, man. I heard a little bit of your story. We had a previous conversation before jumping on the podcast, but I would love for you to share with everybody that's listening right now. Who is Alan Cheng? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, that's great question. I'll try to kind of summarize in bullet points as is our style.
Love it.
But right now, I am an entrepreneur. I founded multiple companies, and I have been building businesses for over 10 years now, I would say, and gone through multiple businesses. And Prep Scholar is the first one that I founded out of, I'll kind of skip around time a little bit. Prep Scholar was the first kind of major company I started in education. The idea being, how do we put the best of a tutor experience into a box? And really built that business, did a lot of, wore many hats there, led the product and engineering teams, as well as our content marketing team. And just kind of throwing out a few things that you guys might want to touch on. And then as that business matured and we installed management in place, decided to move on to the next passion, which in my case was aggregating the world's knowledge, because we just have so much we want to learn. And, so many books that we have on our bookshelf and so many podcasts that we don't possibly have time to listen to. And wouldn't it be great if you could somehow get 10 hours of knowledge, condensed down into 1 hour so that you could really just learn hyper fast and use all of those great ideas to improve your life. And so that's a mission of short form. We're still really early on, started the business in 2019, but we've gotten a lot of traction. I think our quality and response is really good, and we're in scaling mode going up there. And touching on a bit of early life, I actually dropped out of Harvard Medical School. So I was in an MD PhD program, really intense program, takes 8 years to finish.
Wow.
And kind of in the middle, just decided, actually, I don't feel like medicine or science is the best path for me, even though I'd spent over a decade trying to get into, that kind of position. Yeah. And ultimately just made that life choice of, if I don't stop, I was in my mid-20s then, if I don't get off this train, I will never get off again. And, I'm going to regret this forever. So took that decision to leave and found what would become Prep Scholar. And that's just kind of some touch points.
Wow, that's amazing, Alan. That is extremely, it's a good overview, right, of what your life has been and what you're doing, and I love it. And I want to dig a little deeper in some points here, right? Before we start digging in, my brother.
Yeah, because
he's not going to talk at all.
The second Fonzie dives in, it's game over for me. I just want to highlight the way that you summarize stuff and the way your mind works. I was like, I'm completely perplexed on how you were able to put all that information into bullet points, like you said, and just explain it to us, right? And that's something that maybe Fonzie and me need to do a lot better, because we just ramble. And my wife tells me all the time. But I have a question before Fonzie dives into the good stuff, because when we grew up, reading a book was a punishment, right? Like, and we've shared this story so many times where, we will do something different. We're like soccer players, and we will be out there, and then our dad, like, a way to punish is like, go to your room and read this book, right? So we created this belief or, mind block against books, because that was the reaction every time, right? And it's like, you have to read. And then later in life, we listen to different entrepreneurs and dads.
I want to clarify this real quick. Our dad did that with the best intentions.
Yes.
He loved reading. He knew the value on reading.
He has the biggest library ever. Yeah. Like, it's like 4 rooms in the house.
And since he saw we weren't reading as much, he thought the way to make us read was through punishment. All right, proceed.
Pretty much, yeah. He was a military. He was a military guy. Pretty strict guy. Anyways, but as we grew, we knew the value on reading, on learning, on aggregating information, finding out, what you're really passionate about through books. And now our library continues to grow every single day, right? Where you, as far as like information or books, did you grow up like loving the books? Like, what was your relationship with information? What was your relationship with books and learning as you grew up?
Yeah, great question. Books are just one medium to communicate information, right? Like, you learn a lot through articles, through podcasts, through videos. And I think books are still a really good form factor for delivering information. I think they're really well thought out and well crafted. And, a author spends hundreds of hours crafting a book. So, personally, where I am now, I see them as kind of the highest yield of information for time. Like, when I reflect on all the ways I spend my time, in the most productive, I'm reading books and taking notes on them and reflecting on them. In the worst case, I'm browsing Reddit and YouTube and watching videos, right? And like, for 5 hours of time, if you spend it reading a book like The Lean Startup or Blue Ocean Strategy or whatever the case is, like that can possibly change your life. But then 5 hours of Reddit and YouTube just really don't. And so for me, I think, just let's say a decade ago, I didn't read that many nonfiction books either. I of course read what I needed for school, but when I started reading these books and realizing, hey, this actually is giving me a new lens by which to view the world. Like once you learn basic economics, for example, you look at the world completely differently because things, transactions and how the market system works and everything just, it's like you have a new superpower, a new like eyeball to view the world in. So I think once you get into that and you reflect on your experiences of like, oh, actually reading this really did change my life and spending my time doing this other stuff didn't, it's just natural to rationally think, okay, maybe I should spend more of my time reading and learning this stuff. So I think that's where I am now. And as an adult, I think that's how my reading habit developed. When I was a kid, I would say I was, a pretty avid learner. I don't think I sought out nonfiction books all that much, but I read a lot. I read, periodicals like the New Yorker, the Atlantic. Of course, I read a ton for school and was really into science back then. So I would say from an early age, I was always a really avid learner, but not necessarily directed to a practical purpose. Nowadays, I think we all want to build businesses. We all want to be successful in our own ways, however that's defined. And I think books and other materials are really great ways to basically help you solve the problems.
Yeah, I love it how you put it, which kind of like giving the importance to the medium, right? And we heard this once. It's kind of like the hierarchy, and I might be mispronouncing this word, but the hierarchy of mediums, right? Which we consume information. For example, Facebook post about, let's say, online marketing, right? Very generic thing. It might not be as valuable as a podcast that is talking about online marketing on the same information that was published on that post. Like people perceive it differently, right? So now if you have a book, I feel like the book is what is at the top of that pyramid. It is pretty much like the ultimate medium that builds some sort of authority as well around that ecosystem. I think it's such an important thing. And that leads to one of my questions, right? I've wrote so many questions already. We're going to have to track back a little bit back here in a second, Alan. But right now I'm curious on, kind of like finding this balance on consumption and creation, because we are in a world of abundance where we can share our ideas like never before, right? Speak our mind, which I think is absolutely amazing. But a lot of people get caught up in the consumption rabbit hole, right? I've been there, right? I actually, by the end of 2019, I started a personal challenge, which I call the 1-to-1, which is try to consume and creating a 1-to-1 ratio, right? And I've been discovering that is very, very difficult, but it has kind of like turned my focus into what I consume, make it very important, right? So dedicate more time to books. Short form has been a huge helper in there because now I can literally read the distilled, message. So I'm curious, in your mind, when it comes to consumption and creation, what do you think is like either a healthy balance or what do you recommend business owners to do in that sense?
It's a great question. I think it obviously depends on your goals. So what exactly, like for what purpose are you creating content? Is it for self-expression or is it, and you don't care who reads it, you just want someone to it's your way of getting, your thoughts on paper, or is it for marketing and business purposes? And you really want to, get high SEO rank or you want followers on any of these social media platforms. So I think it obviously depends on your purpose. I would say personally for me, I've always had the mindset that like I still have so much to learn and I only put out something when I feel like it's a material step above what's already on the market or what already exists. I don't want to be like, obviously there are just tons of Instagram posts and Twitter posts that no one would really read and they're all kind of like mediocre quality. And I'm not like putting down those creators by any means. It's just on the surface, if you don't know them, it's just like, well, why would I read this over the best books or the best resources in the world? And so whenever I personally put out content, I think about whether it's, personally myself when I'm writing blog posts or through my companies, I really think about what is our differentiator. I don't want to just kind of put out something that's like equal to everything else or to the average thing out there. And especially because if you want to stand out for business purposes, I feel like content is so competitive these days. There are so many amateurs and like the bar to production is so much lower these days that to break through and really get a following, you really need to focus on quality and just like, what do you have that's special to say in the world that no one has said before? That may be too high of a bar, but that's a bar that I personally have in my mindset, because then I'm creating value for the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. I love that mindset, right? I'm going to share here a little bit of our story when it came to creating content. We got stuck for a very long time thinking we need the content to be quality in the production sense, right? We need it to look amazing. 2 different cameras, all the toys that you could imagine. We're like, we need those to make the content quality. But what we discovered then, it was like, it is more important the quality of the message. Like you said, there's such a low barrier of entry into the content game. But I think by thinking, what is your differentiator? You can add that to the message, right? Because I'm sure we have all been victims of watching a video that is absolutely beautifully produced, and then 2 minutes in, we're like, I don't want to watch it anymore because it doesn't resonate. The message is not important. And we have all seen that video that is just a talking head, and we watch it for an hour because the message is so important. Is so good. And that's how I perceive your message on what is your differentiator.
Yeah, when I talk about quality, it's absolutely not production quality. And I say this to our marketing teams all the time, that people really have a high tolerance for production quality. Like, as long as you can look at the pixels and see the pixels, as long as like the text is legible, that's really like all you need. If you actually look at some of the top creators today, like if you go to Joe Rogan's first podcast, it's just like him with a shitty webcam in a dark room. You can barely see him. And that's how he started. I looked at Mr. Beast, huge YouTuber recently. And, for 4 years, he was just producing, like Minecraft content, just like typical gaming content. And then his first kind of breakaway video was him in his room, just like over 24 hours, counting from 1 to 100,000 or something. And, the production quality was just him, with what looked like a webcam or camera phone. But that, like, the content in there was groundbreaking, and no one had done it before. And of course, everyone watched it. And then his next breakthrough video was giving away $10,000 to, a guy in the street. And that, again, was filmed with like a shaky camera. So absolutely, it's not about production quality. It's about the message, or, essentially I would say, what job is your content trying to do for your reader? Like, what problem are you solving? Is it entertainment? Is it education? Is it, a personal connection? If you can do that job better than, the next best content on the market, then I think you can get some traction.
And I think you answered my next question there, right? Like, because, we deal with some clients that they might be at the corporate level, right? And they want a certain level of production because the brand or the business, like this, big company is attached to it, right? And so where's that balance? And I think, what you answered was like, what is the job of that content, right? It really depends. And it's funny because we've seen so many examples of, hey, we really want to connect with this type of audience, and they consume this type of content better, right? Like, or if we want to connect with kind of like C-level kind of stuff, status, branding, all that kind of stuff, then the production level kind of elevates a little bit, but the message has to be consistent. The message has to be there. So I love that you emphasize, and not the first time that you do it today, is what is the job? What is the purpose of that content? And sometimes a lot of people, when they start creating content, they have no idea what the purpose of the content is, right? Like for us, that was a big issue at first. We're like, well, we don't even know what we're going to be talking about. Even before the podcast even started, right? We spent 3 years trying to figure out what the heck we were talking about. Like we went through hundreds of whiteboards and maps and things like, oh, these are all the topics we're going to be talking about. It never happened, right? And it was like, okay, once we simplified, it's like the message is to share amazing stories to interpret. And at first it was just us stories, and then it evolved, right? It continues to evolve over time. So thank you for reminding us twice now in the show that is, what is the objective? And I invite everybody listening and watching now, think about your stuff that you're producing. What is the objective? And then go try things out around that framework. So love it, man.
And you brought up two creators that have something in common, right? Well, a few things in common. Joe Rogan and Mr. Beast. By the way, we love Mr. Beast contest. But some of the things that they have in common, besides a massive following, right, is consistency, and that they have done what they're doing for so many years. And I'm very curious because a lot of people, first, they are not ready to commit and have that consistency, right? And they're bouncing from shiny object to shiny object. But second, some of them are so engaged in that one thing and being consistent, but they haven't seen results. And I wonder, is there a moment to pivot? Is there a moment to change? And my mind goes back to your days in Harvard, where, you know, you were in probably one of the most difficult programs in the US. I mean, you told me, I think you told me they accept only 12 people per year. How incredible is that? And you were 4 years into that program and you decided to pivot and change. How? And you know, why made you pivot? What determines if it's a good pivot or not? When is a good, you know, signal for people? I'm just very curious about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll try to kind of loop it back to the content question as well, which I think is interesting and a little different. Personally, for me, I think, you know, I spent a lot of my teens thinking I would want to be a doctor, and you know, I kind of had that goal in mind, and I just gunned toward that goal. It was like 100% every day was in college was gunning towards that goal. And I don't think I thought very hard about like, what do I actually really want, and do I want this goal? I think, you know, modern life and the capitalist setup is really good at dangling carrots in front of you, and you can spend a lot of time trying to chase that carrot. And when you finally get it, or you know, partway through, if you don't even get it, you don't often stop to think like, do I actually want this? Like, is it right for me? And what are the alternatives out there? So for me, I think it was a combination of two things. Like when I got into medical school, I realized, you know, there are some things about medicine I don't like personally for my personality. Like, I don't really like following rules necessarily. And medicine is all about following rules.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you don't, it's called malpractice, right? And then if I like kind of creating new things, and there's not a ton of space for that in practicing medicine. I want my impact to be linear, like exponential over time. Like I want it to be scalable. I want to create things that can, you know, have an impact without me manually doing things. And you can't really do that when you're practicing medicine. And I didn't really realize this until I got into school. And I think I should have spent more time exploring in college and trying out other things to realize this. But whatever the case was, you know, I realized I don't see myself being the happiest I could be if I were practicing medicine. And I could foresee a life where I spent 30 or 40 years doing that. And I didn't want to be 60 or 70 and look back in my life and with a, you know, full regret, thinking, boy, I should have had the bravery to do what I wanted to do back then. And so once I realized that and kind of projected out that kind of decision tree, I realized, okay, I have to make a change right now, because otherwise I'm going to regret it forever.
Wow.
So thank you for that, because, you know, we go through a lot of identity changes. You know, I feel like, especially like for us, last year was insane. Like, so, you know, we started the year as freelancers. We ended up the year with, you know, almost 10 people in a team, like business going great, really. Like, and we're very blessed to be put in that position. But wow, what a roller coaster it was, right? Like in March, we thought this was over in like 30 days, right? And then before that, it's like 3 years that took us to get on different ideas, different businesses, lots of obviously failures, lots of no's, right? And through that, there's a lot of personal growth that goes into it. So you mentioned, you know, you saw that it doesn't fit to your personality, right? Like you were like, hey, I recognize that I don't act. This is not the best way I could act, right? I could do something different and I'll get a better result. Now, I feel like a lot of people today, and I want to generalize here, but I was there, right? Like it's like, push through it, right? Like I feel this way, but I need to push through. Like why do we have that feeling, right? And then once we recognize it, why sometimes we don't take action as fast as possible? Is there something that we can do to, as soon as we recognize it, go it? Like how do you find that out? Was it just you or somebody told you?
Yeah, it's such a tricky question, because I think it requires a balance, right? Like you could go too far in either direction. If you like encounter early difficult, like you hear all the time about startups and businesses that like push through that early difficulty to make it big. Like Airbnb had this story where for a year, like they got no traction or very little. And then, you know, they were maxing out their credit cards and everything. So you like have these stories and think like, oh, you know, maybe I should do that and I should keep pushing through. But at the other time, like sometimes it's not a good fit and you shouldn't suffer, and there are better things for you and you should quit. And I think I get asked this a lot from other startup founders who are wondering whether to quit or commit, even, high school kids or college kids who are like, what do I do with my life and how do I figure this out? I think it's all part of the same thing, which is, first, I think you have to discover what you want out of life and what that means to you. And that could be on a theoretical level, like I want personal agency, I want freedom, or I want to be told what to do and I like following orders, stuff like theoretical stuff like that, as well as, life preferences, like I want to live in this place and have this kind of lifestyle and so forth. And I think that's where a lot of people probably fail, like in the first is they don't really think that hard about what they want out of life. And if you don't define that well for yourself, then you can't possibly optimize for it. It's like trying to shoot a gun when you don't even know where the target is. So I think that's where a lot of people fall short. They don't spend enough time thinking about it. They're just kind of chasing the next carrot, which is a mistake, again, I made when I was trying to get into med school. And then for the the quit and commit decision, I think is also tough. And I've been trying to think about heuristics for this, like for our managers at Prep Scholar. Like, when do you feel like you've done enough to prove the hypothesis? And when do you devote your time to the next best project? It's a really hard choice, and I think companies, even like professional founders and investors, don't know this, right? Like there are plenty of their job is to know when a company is done or not, and they still have a terrible batting average, probably like well below 300. So I think the first thing to recognize is it's a hard problem. I don't think that anyone has an easy solution to figure this out. I would personally say, like, if you've been miserable for one is trust your emotions and instinct. Like if you've been miserable for a long time and you think, I really don't enjoy this, that could, I think, be a good signal if there's not an upward slope and you're not improving. Second is probably just based on idea space. Like, do I have any more ideas to resuscitate this project or to get it to grow? If I don't have any more ideas, then there's probably nothing more I can do, and then I should look elsewhere.
That's I love that answer, and I wrote down here, when do you know you have done enough to prove the hypothesis? I think that is a great question that people must ask themselves, kind of like the same as you were saying of trying to find their why. Right? We've heard it, right? Simon Sinek, start with the why. It is such a big movement of getting to know yourself before you tackle this entrepreneurial activities, right? For example, or your passions. And what came to mind is that there are so many contradicting messages out there, because yes, like we can look in our why, and our why is saying, yes, I love this. I love the outcome that I'm going, but in between there's so many obstacles, and of course I'm going to feel resistance, right? And then now, how much resistance do I need to face to prove that my hypothesis is not right? Or should I push through that resistance, right? There's a book, Anti-Fragile. I'm sure you've heard about it. And it's pretty much about that. You got to push through that resistance. So there's so many contradicting messages that make that answer very, very difficult. Like you said, I don't think it has been defined. But I think it is key. I believe in what you said of you need to look inside and know yourself, because I think that is going to give you a standard on, yes, you can push through this resistance, or it is time to pivot, right? So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm curious, how often do you look inside of yourself and ask that question to yourself?
I don't know if... let me think about this. I mean, I want to say basically there's elements of that I think about every day. Like, why am I doing this project? What is the goal of this? What is the goal of the company? Like, what am I really aiming for? I think about that on some level probably every day. There's like more formal things like, setting quarterly goals and OKRs and stuff like that force you to do that. But I think it's always been a part of my thinking, especially after I decided to leave med school. Like, I got paranoid about making the same mistake again.
Wow.
Because I devoted, 10 years of my life to getting into med school. And I think that was I enjoyed all my time, and some of my best friends I've met through the process. And I still, I think, have, some medical knowledge. I can't be helpful on a plane, but still a little bit. But like, it still, I think, was almost traumatizing to me. Like, how could I be so wrong about what I wanted in life? And so I think after that, it became a habit to me to just like check in frequently and think like, what am I really aiming for? Like when I build a business, is it because I want more money? What do I want that money for? Like, what is that going to give me above the money I already have?
Yeah.
Is it because of impact? What kind of impact do I want to make? What kind of impact is cool? Like, why do I enjoy this project and not? I don't know if I think about it to like an unhealthy degree. It's not paralyzing to me, but yeah, I think about it constantly, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good reminder for those that are listening, right? Check in with yourself consistently and don't wait too long. So then you look back and are like, oh man, like I'm not going to say wasted years, because I'm sure you have, like you said, friendships, lots of lessons that you learned. Yeah. But I guess you want to try to minimize the regret factor.
Yeah.
I would say cutting really quickly, I would say that like one good piece of advice is to keep asking yourself why until you can't answer it anymore. Like, why do I want this promotion? What if I don't get this promotion? Like, is it the social status? Why do I care about social status? Why do I care what anyone else thinks? Like, is it the recognition of my work? And you just keep asking yourself why until you can't answer it. And I think it'll lead some people into like pretty, deep places that they may not have encountered before. But it's like a muscle, I think. Like as you think about these questions more, then I think you have a better compass for making decisions in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's so powerful. I never, we've been around sales for quite a while now. I started sales in the fitness industry, right? And one of the things that we learned back then was like, continue to ask the why, right? Like, why do you want to work out? And then, after the third or fourth why, you'll see the real reason, right? Like, oh, I want to look better. Well, why do you want to look better? Well, I have a cruise. Well, why do I have a cruise? Oh, my friend is going to a wedding. Oh, sweet. Awesome. So you want to look really good for the wedding, right? So they're like, oh, sweet. Yes, that's the real reason. But I never asked that question to myself on, why am I doing this? Why are we doing Contents Profit? Why are we doing this?
I think some people are afraid of asking that question to themselves.
It might be really scary to see what the answer is, right? Because, you put in so much work, so much time, so much investment into this, right? Like up to the point we invested thousands of dollars in the development of us, the business itself, especially last year, right? So it is a scary but necessary question. So I think, Fonzie, I think this is right down your alley because you love all this stuff. So, and especially, next week we're meeting for some cool stuff happening in 2021. And this might be one of the questions, right? It's like, is this really, achieving the purpose? And I think it is, right? Like at a level, but we're scared to dive in. So I love that you brought that perspective and bring it back to yourself, to your business, to your teams, right? Like so important. You mentioned about your managers and how you guys do that with them.
We're gonna have to get our scuba diving gear and just dive deep.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Do we have a one sound?
Bad joke.
Wow, you're not even a dad. You can't say dad jokes. Wow, that's my job, Fonso. Okay. So through this, I'm sure you've encountered several challenges. Is there one that maybe stick up to you, like when it comes to building the company, or when it comes to publishing? With your publishing, like what is something that maybe comes to mind when you hear the word challenge, and then how are you able to move past it, or how do you solve it?
I think there's maybe one like tactical answer to that and one psychological answer, and I'll go over both. The tactical answer I would say is more about growth. Like, I think people start companies because they want to grow, and many wanted to grow as large as they possibly can. And often, the strategies that you do often have like a plateau. So like, there's a sigmoidal curve. You like start off and then there's some traction, and then at some point they plateau. And I think like, I would say one of the hardest parts or like patterns that I see in growing any business is just how do you get more customers? How do you how do you find new strategies that work and move beyond what you're comfortable doing? I think, most businesses with some level of traction, like I think yours and business I've started have, are very good at doing certain marketing channels well. And I'm focusing on marketing. I think product has a role too, but like you're really good at certain channels and things, but then that caps off. So how do you kind of push beyond your comfort zone and find new channels or ways to reach customers, or even develop new product lines that you're not comfortable with, but that's the only way that you can grow because you've already maxed out everything. I would say that's like a constant source of reinvention for me because, I'm in my early 30s. I've been in the game for, I would say, a while. But there are still plenty of things that I'm very bad at or like have no experience in. Like I'm not an organic social media person. We had to kind of develop those tools in house and get experience with it. But like I just don't use social media that much, so I'm not like as attuned to it as someone else. But those people may not be as good at performance marketing and doing really fine-tuned AdWords like API optimizations.
Yes.
So you often have to like push beyond what you're comfortable with to grow in order to grow the company.
Absolutely. I love it. And that brings to mind, I mean, earlier we're having this conversation. I'm not sure if you're in Clubhouse yet, but apparently like that is the hottest thing like in marketers ever.
New trend,
the new trend, right? And I created my profile like 3 weeks ago, never logged into the app. And, enough people were talking about it. I'm like, okay, let's check this out. And one of the reasons was what you were just saying. It's like, feeling uncomfortable with like the new thing, right? And it's like, okay, do we have the capacity to actually execute on this thing? Do I have the capacity to actually learn the process and the thing? And then do I actually feel comfortable creating something there, right? Because for now, a lot of the questions that we ask is like, do we actually have the capacity to implement consistently something here? So this morning actually was the first time that we both logged in and we're like, wow, there's actually a lot of potential. And immediately some conversations started to happen. Opportunities started to like come on in our minds. I'm like, wow, there's a fire there. That's interesting. Now, how can we adapt it here? And the fact that you say, hey, there's a plateau somewhere, but then what am I willing to do that's uncomfortable to try these new things? And I think like for us, that was today with Clubhouse. We're like, in my head, I'm like, I'm not comfortable. Like, I don't really want to learn a new one, right? Like we're in LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Facebook Live, podcasts, like you name it, we're almost there, right? Like, and it's like, okay, how can we bring that into this new platform? Mentally, I wasn't there, but now that you said, it's like, am I willing to actually put myself in a position to be uncomfortable and learn and try new frameworks around that platform? Wow, that's so valuable. And I think, if you put a framework around that where like every 3 months, every 4 months, you look into these new possibilities, like what is the opportunity, right? Like, are we hitting the plateau here? And look back at those numbers, look back at the data that's coming back to you. It's so important. So thank you for bringing that new perspective.
I totally agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's important, right? I think that has been one of the most important questions that we started asking ourselves in, mid 2020, which was, what is our capacity, right? Can we stick to this long term? Because we've tried to do things and then, a month or two, let's drop them, or we forget them because we have so many things to do, right? I think there's like I might butcher this, but there's a saying that is people over, it's like people think they can do a lot in the short term, but they underestimate what they can do in the long term. Something like that.
It was Tony Robbins. It's like, people underestimate what they can do in a year and overestimate what they can do in 10 years. Or backwards.
Backwards.
Okay, backwards.
Yeah, whatever. We butchered that one.
Butcher it. Yeah, we go. Sorry, Tony. Okay. Moving on.
We butchered the sound too. But Alan, the point here is that, right? Asking that question, I think, every quarter, right? Or once a month with everything that you're doing, right? And then, do I actually have the space to do these things on a consistent basis? You were going to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was going to comment that I think this is another, I would say, classically hard problem in building a company is like you need a balance of experimentation and focus. Like you can easily just do 50 different projects and hope that one of them is like a lottery ticket that wins. But you also need enough focus because you won't break through on Clubhouse or TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever on your first try. You need to give it enough. And I think this touches back on, the quit or commit thing we talked about. Like that decision exists on every layer. It's what I do with my life and life choices and career choices, as well as like, should I keep, posting things on TikTok? Like, I think that's such a core life question that's important. And in this case, I think it's a very delicate tension. Like, how do you know you've done enough so that your strategy isn't working? Whether that's posting new content on YouTube or trying to make it on Twitch or whatever. It's a hard question. And I personally look at the data a lot and try to set goals for myself. Like, okay, we're going to do at least this using this strategy. And if we don't hit these benchmarks, then we're going to cut the project, or like we have to find a new strategy. And I think having some guideposts like that is helpful.
good.
So you don't just, you have to commit to projects and you define the scope of it beforehand. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to try it and then give up after 2 posts.
Yeah. Wow. I love what you're saying right now, and I'm gonna tie it to something that I heard on a podcast yesterday with James Altucher, and he was saying, right, like totally different industry, but he was talking about how he lost all his money few times, and now when he goes and invests, he says he only invests 1% of his net worth. He never invests more than 1% of his net worth into a business, and he said because if he loses it, then it doesn't matter. But if it works, right, if it can triple or sometimes like 100x the investment, now he just double his net worth, right? And now putting these two things together, right, I'm like, what if we kind of like tackle this issue the same way? Kind of like divide your time that you have that you dedicate to your business, and you said that balance between experimentation and focus. So what is the amount of time that you're willing to give to this new task that if you drop it, it doesn't affect you that much, right? It doesn't matter. But if it starts working, you can pick up and you can give it more of your time investment. So that was just a realization that I had right now. I wanted to put it into words.
Sorry, hold on. Let me do this right. There we go. Golden boulder moment.
I just wanted to put this into words. I think it could be something pretty valuable there. So thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate it.
Breakthrough through the show, man. Look at that. That's good.
And I also had another idea for the show. We'll comment that
later.
A little later. But Alan, I have a very selfish question that I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
From even the first conversation that we had, and it is, how do you retain so much information? Because I do believe that to create new ideas, right, you need to have a solid base of information that you're consuming and you're keeping somewhere in your brain. And then when you're trying to create these ideas, those resurface and you make new connections, and that's how ideas are built. How is your process to either store those ideas in your brain, note-taking apps? How do you do it? Because I think it's so important for the creator to have that sort of database, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I would say the model that makes the most sense to me comes from Charlie Munger, which is to have like a lattice work of mental models. And the idea is, well, there are a few thoughts here, but I think the main thing is ideas in isolation don't really stick that well. Like it's kind of like memorizing dates in seventh grade history. It's like, oh, this person was born at this day and whatever. Like, I don't really give a shit about this, so like, I can't retain that knowledge for more than the test. But when you can connect the pieces together and like, oh, I learned about this economic theory and that connects to my personal experience with this, and that this business's decision suddenly makes sense. So you build this like lattice work of things that connect to each other. I think that reinforces everything in your mental kind of neural network, and I think that's been the most effective way for me. I, like sometimes you deliberately do this, like and I think you did this just multiple times throughout this call, which is awesome. Which is like, I just remembered this thing, or I've heard this thing, and that's connecting to this thing. Like that's exactly helping you guys with retention. And I think if you try to do that actively, like when you read a book, don't just kind of read it and gloss over it, but like actively think, what is the main point of this chapter? How does this connect to my experience? What mistakes did I make when I didn't follow this in the past? Like, what lessons can I connect this to with other businesses that I've seen? That I think helps reinforce the knowledge a lot.
That's so good, and that's such a great framework too. And I think as you were explaining it, I was going in my head. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, right? So what happens is I have to drop the baby, and it's like an hour drive.
Wait, I want to add this. Short form has an audio of they read the summaries for you. Just throwing that out there,
I'll be there, Alan. Don't you worry, my man. I'll be there. But so here's the thing, like I'm very visual, and if with the audio, what happens is I listen to it, and then in my head, I'm picturing these experiences, either mine or that, which is probably what happens when you read. And like Fonzie said, like I am a very slow reader, right? So I love it because unconsciously, that's when I recognize that I'm remembering those ideas or those terms or those things, right? Because I am attaching them to an experience. So now that you put it in a framework form, we're like, oh, sweet. Now consciously, I can now purposely, okay, what is the experience that I can relate to this lesson because it means so much, and then do that repeatedly, and it's amazing with every piece of content that we might consume. So. Dude, just knowledge bombs left and right. Alan, wow, you're killing it, man. Thank you.
This is amazing. And while you were saying that, I was noticing like, wow, that is true, right? I love highlighting books and putting Post-its on books. And it got to a moment where I was like, this is very passive. Like I am... The act of highlighting things is not getting things in my head. I'm like, I need a way to get things in my head, right? And now started taking notes on the books on the side, and every note that I take are usually how I can relate that to either our business or my personal life. Is that how you go about when you put these short form summaries together? I mean, I'm sure you have a team and all that stuff, but I noticed that...
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Short form started really as a hobby. When I was still building Prep Scholar like 5 years ago, I wanted to read more and retain, the knowledge more. So I started writing my own summaries of these books. They were very detailed. They were kind of chapter by chapter. And I think in the process of writing them, I really challenged myself to kind of almost write them without referring to the book. Like I read the chapter. What is this chapter about? What is the point the author is making? How does it connect to the rest of the book? How does this book connect to other books that I've read? Like you're building, again, this really dense network of ideas. Yeah. And the process of doing this is, was why I wrote the summaries to begin with. And I posted them online, and people really liked them and said they were the best summaries they ever read. And then from there, I thought, oh, maybe we should, maybe there's a product around this and we should build it.
Listening to the audience.
But I think like it does require active effort. It's kind of like the mental equivalent of eating vegetables. Like, it's good for you, but it does take energy. And at the end of the day, a lot of people would rather watch Netflix than, read the book and think hard about it. It is hard. You have to build a habit around it. It's like any other habit. But if you do it regularly, it yields massive dividends, I think, for your life.
Yeah. Do you have a framework on these book summaries? Do you read a chapter and then do the summary, or do you read the whole thing and then dive into it?
Yeah, typically, what I did myself and our writers, what they do is our standard is chapter by chapter.
Wow.
And the reason is that each chapter is usually a pretty good like modular piece of information. And by the time you finish the book, you forget often what the first chapter was about.
Yep.
So there's you may know about like spaced repetition theory and how like once you learn something, you should exercise that information immediately, and then that like locks it in for you. And then you want to space out the kind of like recall in kind of like a Fibonacci sequence. Like you want to review it the day after, and then 2 days after, 3 days after, 5 days after. That's only for like really hardcore if you want to memorize stuff. But you get the general concept. Like after you read something, it's the best time to, I think, act on it and actively think about it is right after reading it.
Yeah, you're giving me flashbacks here. I remember when I was back in school and my mom was telling me, don't just take notes right now. You gotta, check your notes tomorrow and then a week after that. So the knowledge sticks. And I was like, sure, mom, sure. And I never listened to her. Yeah. She's a math teacher. So when you said the Fibonacci, I was like, look at that.
She's getting a lot of points in this podcast. Marketer with the Luis and Luis thing, and now the mathematician with the Fibonacci.
I'm relating the chapter to chapter now to the one-to-one kind of like framework that I was telling you about at the very beginning. Because now you are consuming one chapter and then you're creating, whether that is for yourself or to share it, but now you're creating that summary and help that stick to you. So I might start using that. I like that.
Dude, man, Alan, this has been like incredible. Wow. We could talk for days, and we agree that it was a 24-hour marathon, but today we have to lunch. But what is a good action point for somebody that's, starting a business, starting to publish, building that habit? What is something that they can do today to continue that momentum?
And so I guess the problem you're asking about is often people like it's easy to start something, but people lose hope or motivation and they stop. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so consistency has been a massive point of conversation, especially last year when we first started with the show, right?
We had a good consistency segment here too.
Exactly.
Today.
So we can tackle that way there. Mm-hmm. How do we actually stay consistent? How do we build consistency?
I would say a good place to start is if you naturally like producing the content or whatever you're doing, just intrinsically without the results. I think that's a good thing. Like I think that's probably good for any content creator. Like they just love producing what they're doing, even if no one pays attention to it, even if no one gives them money for it. I would say that's a good natural place to start. On the other hand, if you're miserable producing every video and whatever, and like you just don't even enjoy the process, I think it's kind of hard to force, and maybe you should find another type of content production or in other tasks that you intrinsically enjoy more. So I would say that's a good place to start. I mean, you guys probably enjoy talking to people like me, even regardless of the business benefits. Like it seems like you guys really enjoy it and get pumped up about it.
100%.
And that has helped.
Yeah.
Like if instead we asked you to, publish 10 pages of math formulas that you had to write from memory or something, then you probably hate it. So
not happening ever.
I think the intrinsic motivation piece is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And I would say like a critical part afterward, I'm sure there are tricks to like, have a content schedule and stuff like that. Like you've probably covered tactics like that before. I don't know if I have really smart recommendations, but yeah, probably my one insightful thing here is to find something you really enjoy producing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that of detaching yourself from the result. Can you see yourself doing this, whether you achieve that result or not? I think that is very, very important. And that's what we have discovered this past year with the podcast. It's like, man, we just love having these conversations and connecting with people, right? Whether the podcast makes it right next to Joe Rogan's or not. Cool. We love these conversations that we're creating.
Yeah, the cool thing, retrospectively, like looking back, right? Like we've been removing friction. It's like, okay, how can we remove the friction to publish, like in order to publish, right? What are those elements that we don't like, that we don't enjoy doing? How can we put people in places in there so they can execute for us to continue to elevate the content? Because the main conversation is what we truly love, right? And the last few episodes we mentioned that we never really saw the data until like 8 months in, and we discovered that everything was going up. Like every single point, like data point was trending up, and we're like, wow, what an incredible experience, right? Because we detached it from the results, and we're like, followers go up, conversations go up, calls go up, sales go, everything. And it's like over time, because we detached it, and it was so hard for us to do that. But once we did, and together with enjoying the process, what you just said, it has been incredible. So thank you. I think that is a very good actionable tip for everybody. Please listen, guys. Please go ahead. And don't take it from us.
Before the very last question,
yes,
I want to add maybe 2 quick ones. They're going to be quick. First is, what is your favorite book ever?
Yeah, great one. I would say probably the book that really had the most transformation in how I live life, do business is The Lean Startup. It's obviously a business classic, but I think the idea that you can, how do I prove a hypothesis in the least amount of resources possible is applicable to anything in life. Like, how do I, know if this if you're trying to find a girlfriend or something, like how do I know this dating app is going to work for me? How do I know that this new negotiation method is going to work for me and getting a new salary? Like that framework, I think, can be applied to so much in life. And so I think I go back to it and reinforce the concepts like frenetically. And I just love that book.
That's awesome.
Love it.
Thank you. So The Lean Startup, go get that book, guys. Or even better, go get the summary at shortform.com.
Bam! Damn.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Just get all the goodies, all that knowledge from Alan. Alan, did you write that one, that summary for the
The
Lean
Lean
Startup?
Startup was one of my earliest ones. So yeah, that one is written by me.
Look
so you
at-
can blame me if you don't like it, but I think it's pretty good.
I'm sure it is amazing. And then the other question is not so much of a question. I wanted to throw it out there. a brand new segment to the podcast.
Oh,
what?
man.
My brother didn't even know this.
Okay, sweet. Let's go.
So honestly,
we'll roll with it.
Honestly, Alan, when we were talking, I was like, my marketer mind was just racing, and I was like, oh man, so many cool ideas for short form, right? And I'm not trying to like impose anything, obviously, on you, but I want to share with everybody that when you get ideas like this, it's okay to talk them and bounce them around to see if they are viable or not, right? So my ideas were to promote short form, right? I was like, oh man, how can we promote short form? Because since I landed on the page, I was like, this has so much potential. So I have two things in mind. So I'm going to ask respectfully, is it okay if I share them, Alan?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Hi.
I'm always happy to hear ideas.
Cool. So first one, I mean, this is nothing new, but I think your brand identifies a lot with a creator called, I think his name is Ali Abdul. I don't know if you heard about him.
He's a YouTuber, I think.
Yeah, huge YouTuber.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about books and reading. He used to be, I think he was a medicine or he was studying to being a doctor in Oxford. So I think you two would definitely connect if you manage to get a hold of him. And if he gets millions of views in his channel. So if by any chance you guys can get to work with him, I think that would be incredible for short form. And then the other one, more on the content side of things and thinking about how can we make it entertaining, right? And I just thought about this old setup, like dark, dim light, kind of like a fireplace, and have someone with a book, but they're just reading part of the summary, and then they're like, the end. And it's like short form, right? Kind of like educational and entertaining at the same time. And it's like, now I have the rest of the day. And he opens the windows like the day. He has like the rest of the day to enjoy instead of, spending 8 hours reading the entire book.
That's definitely his pain.
Yeah,
That's definitely his pain.
So I just wanted to share those ideas that come into my mind. I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
But
That's cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. When we start on video ads, that'll be one of our pitches.
There you go.
Yes,
There you go.
go.
Well, awesome, man, dude. It has been a pleasure. Last question: where will you be if you did not publish?
Oh, it's an interesting question. Well, I think short form certainly wouldn't exist. So I don't think I would have kind of discovered that people like the content and that it was worth building a business around. So I would probably be building a different type of business. But even for Prep Scholar, we made our name by publishing really high quality guides on college admissions and in high school, and we're probably the most trafficked domain in our industry. And if we didn't publish, our company would definitely be a lot smaller. And so I think we've definitely gotten in the habit of producing content that we think is, best in the world at what we do and really adds value to the world.
Yeah.
And that has helped the business. It's helped us reach millions of people around the world. And most of them don't buy stuff from us, and that's totally fine. It's just free information for the world. And, we love to help people that way. So our impact would be smaller. Businesses would be smaller. We'd probably be enjoying our work less. That's probably where we'd be if we didn't publish.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
And like many times we ask this question for us, we're like, hey, we got to keep going. And I hope he's doing the same thing for the audience because, what you built and everything. I mean, just the impact that you've had in Fonzie alone has been incredible. So, you probably have thousands of Fonzies, I'm probably a Luisa after today because I am definitely going to check that out for sure and let you guys know. But where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? And if they're interested to learn more about you, about the companies, where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to shortform.com. That's my main business right now, and would love to hear feedback on it anytime. Can also email me directly at allen@shortform.com, ALLEN @shortform.com. Happy to answer questions. I love just talking to other founders, no matter what stage you're in. And we're all kind of like veterans on the battlefield in our own way, like face the same struggles. And so I just love talking to other founders.
Awesome, man. Thank you. If we break your inbox, it was definitely this episode. So, just saying, just putting it out there into the world.
Yeah. I'm going to encourage people, ask him for a book recommendation. I was so surprised on that post on Trends, how you actually recommended different books for everybody. I was like, how does he keep all that information in his head? And today we figured that out.
Yes, we did. Alan, any last thoughts that you want to share with us or the audience before we head out?
No, I enjoyed this a lot. You guys are awesome, and would be back if your audience has questions, or if I can help your audience in another way.
Absolutely,
Thank you,
man.
Alan.
Thank you. We're gonna take that offer. So part 2 coming soon. We have a few part 2s. This is awesome, dude. So great.
We need to do like a tour and eventually do these interviews in person. I think that'll be so exciting.
Ooh.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to meet you guys.
Yeah,
definitely.
Thank you, man. All right. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button and follow us on social media at Beast Bros Co.
That is rad. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you did because Alan was awesome, please don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Bye, guys.